You might have never heard about this before, but today I'm going to tell you the truth, and trust me, if you stay with me until the very end, you'll gain so much value that you'll say to yourself, your time was truly well spent. And yes, if you enjoy these stories from the past, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and drop a sweet comment down below. You probably wouldn't expect one of the Great Depression's most iconic recipes to come from something as ordinary as peanut butter, but that's exactly what happened. And trust me, once you hear the story, you'll realize this simple loaf was far more than just food, it was survival baked into every slice. In the 1930s, families faced bare cupboards. Eggs, butter, even sugar, things we take for granted today, were luxuries many couldn't dream of affording. But peanut butter? Cheap, shelf-stable, and full of protein, it was the hidden hero of the kitchen. Resourceful homemakers discovered that peanut butter could replace what they lacked. Stirred into dough with just flour, baking soda, and milk, it transformed into a hearty loaf that was filling, long-lasting, and dependable. No frosting, no fancy flavorings, just a dense bread with a nutty sweetness that could stretch across days. For children, a slice meant enough energy to make it through school without hunger gnawing at them. For adults, it fueled endless hours of work in fields and factories. Sometimes, if a family had a bit of jam or honey, it became a treat. Other times, it was eaten plain, toasted, or dipped in a glass of milk. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't a celebration. But peanut butter bread became a quiet symbol of resilience, proof that even in the darkest times, creativity and determination could turn the simplest ingredients into something that sustained entire households. And though it has vanished from most kitchens today, its story remains a loaf that carried families through hardship, reminding us that sometimes, the most unassuming recipes hold the deepest history. Mock apple pie. You might have never heard about this before, but today I'm going to tell you the truth, and trust me, if you stay with me until the very end, you'll gain so much value that you'll say to yourself, your time was truly well spent. And yes, if you enjoy these stories from the past, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and drop a sweet comment down below. Now, let's move to one of the most clever Depression-era desserts ever created, mock apple pie. At first glance, it looked exactly like a traditional apple pie, golden crust on top and a sweet filling inside. But here's the shocking part, during the Great Depression, many families couldn't afford fresh fruit, especially apples. They were expensive, and for families trying to survive, buying them was almost impossible. Yet people still craved comfort food, and apple pie was America's favorite. So, homemakers turned to creativity. They took simple soda crackers, crushed them, and cooked them with sugar, cinnamon, nutmeg, and a splash of lemon or vinegar. The mixture softened and took on the texture of apples. Layered inside a pie crust and baked, it fooled the eye and even the taste buds. Many children grew up believing they had eaten apple pie, when in reality, it was just crackers and spices. This dish became more than dessert. It was a symbol of resilience, proof that even in hard times, families found ways to bring joy to the table. It reminded people that food wasn't just about survival, it was also about hope, tradition, and the feeling of normal life. And here's the amazing part, some cookbooks from the 1930s actually listed mock apple pie as a standard recipe, showing just how deeply it became part of American kitchens. So, while the pie may not have had a single apple, it carried the flavor of home, love, and survival. Mulligan stew. You might have never heard about this before, but today I'm going to tell you the truth, and trust me, if you stay with me until the very end, you'll gain so much value that you'll say to yourself, your time was truly well spent. And yes, if you enjoy these stories from the past, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and drop a sweet comment down below. Now, let's talk about a dish that wasn't born in a kitchen, but around campfires along America's railroads, mulligan stew. During the Great Depression, thousands of people lost their jobs and homes. Many became drifters, traveling the country by hopping onto trains, looking for work or simply a way to survive. These wanderers, often called hobos, developed a unique tradition of sharing whatever scraps of food they had. When night fell and the campfire was lit, each person would contribute something small: a potato, a carrot, a bit of meat, or even just an onion. All of it went into one large pot, simmering slowly into a stew. That stew became known as mulligan stew. It was never the same twice. Some nights it was hearty and filling, other times it was thin and barely enough to keep hunger away. But what mattered most wasn't the taste, it was the spirit of community. People who had nothing gave whatever little they could, and together, they created a meal that kept everyone going. Mulligan stew symbolized the resilience of ordinary Americans during desperate times. It wasn't just food, it was survival with dignity, built on sharing and kindness. For those living along the edges of society, this stew was often the only warm meal they'd have for days. And though it may sound humble, its story reminds us that survival isn't only about what's in the pot, it's about people coming together when life is at its hardest. Vinegar pie. You might have never heard about this before, but today I'm going to tell you the truth, and trust me, if you stay with me until the very end, you'll gain so much value that you'll say to yourself, your time was truly well spent. And yes, if you enjoy these stories from the past, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and drop a sweet comment down below. Now, let's move to one of the most surprising desserts of the Great Depression: vinegar pie. Yes, you heard that right. A pie made with vinegar. At first, it sounds odd, maybe even unappetizing, but back in the 1930s, this was a clever way to bring flavor and comfort to families when ingredients were scarce. Fresh fruit like lemons was expensive and often unavailable in rural America. Yet homemakers still wanted to bake pies that had a tangy, refreshing taste. So, they reached for the one ingredient almost every kitchen had: a bottle of vinegar. Mixed with sugar, water, butter, and a pinch of spices, vinegar transformed into a sweet and tart custard-like filling. When poured into a pie crust and baked, it gave a flavor surprisingly close to lemon pie. It wasn't about fooling anyone, it was about making the best of what you had. Vinegar pie became a symbol of ingenuity. Families who could not afford fruit still managed to put a dessert on the table that lifted spirits and gave them a sense of normalcy. Imagine sitting down at dinner with almost nothing to eat, and ending the meal with a slice of pie, sweet, warm, and comforting, even if it wasn't made the traditional way. This pie wasn't just food. It was hope, disguised in a humble crust. It reminded people that no matter how hard times got, a little creativity could turn simple ingredients into something special. And if a pie made with vinegar could bring joy, just wait until you hear about the next dish. It wasn't sweet at all, just cornmeal and water, but it fed thousands of hungry families. Cornmeal mush. You might have never heard about this before, but today I'm going to tell you the truth, and trust me, if you stay with me until the very end, you'll gain so much value that you'll say to yourself, your time was truly well spent. And yes, if you enjoy these stories from the past, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and drop a sweet comment down below. Now, let's turn to one of the simplest yet most important survival foods of the Depression: cornmeal mush. In the 1930s, families needed meals that were cheap, filling, and could stretch far. Cornmeal was one of the most affordable staples available, and it became the backbone of countless kitchens. With just cornmeal, water, and a little salt, you could make a hot, thick porridge known as cornmeal mush. It was plain, but it kept stomachs full. Families would eat it hot for breakfast, sometimes with a drizzle of molasses or syrup if they could afford it. But the real magic came the next day. Leftover mush was poured into a pan, cooled until firm, sliced into squares, and fried until golden brown. Suddenly, yesterday's plain porridge became crispy, hearty cakes stretching one pot of food into two completely different meals. Cornmeal mush carried more than just calories. It carried tradition. Many immigrant families, especially those from farming backgrounds, were already familiar with similar dishes in their homelands. In the Depression, it became a universal food of survival, simple, humble, and always dependable. Children might have grown tired of seeing mush day after day, but for struggling families, it was a lifeline. A sack of cornmeal could feed a household for weeks when there was nothing else to eat. This dish may not sound exciting today, but during the hardest of times, cornmeal mush was the difference between going hungry and making it through another day. Dandelion greens salad. You might have never heard about this before, but today I'm going to tell you the truth, and trust me, if you stay with me until the very end, you'll gain so much value that you'll say to yourself, your time was truly well spent. And yes, if you enjoy these stories from the past, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and drop a sweet comment down below. Now, let's talk about a food that didn't come from the grocery store at all. It came from the ground, growing wild in backyards and fields. This was the dandelion greens salad. During the Great Depression, fresh vegetables were a luxury many families simply couldn't afford. But hunger has a way of teaching resourcefulness. People looked around their own yards and discovered that the common dandelion, yes, the weed most of us try to get rid of, was actually edible and packed with nutrients. Families would go outside with baskets, picking young dandelion leaves before they became too bitter. These greens could be boiled, sautéed, or eaten raw with a little vinegar or oil if available. Sometimes they were mixed with foraged onions or wild herbs to make a simple salad. It may not have been glamorous, but dandelion greens were free, nutritious, and available to anyone willing to bend down and gather them. For families struggling to put anything green on the table, this humble weed became a dependable source of vitamins. And there was something powerful about it, too. Eating dandelion greens reminded people that survival didn't always come from money or markets, it came from using the resources already around them. A weed turned into food, and a symbol of resilience. Children back then might have wrinkled their noses at a plate of bitter greens, but those salads kept many families healthy during desperate times. Depression-era bread. You might have never heard about this before, but today I'm going to tell you the truth, and trust me, if you stay with me until the very end, you'll gain so much value that you'll say to yourself, your time was truly well spent. And yes, if you enjoy these stories from the past, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and drop a sweet comment down below. Now, let's talk about something almost every home depended on: Depression-era bread. Bread has always been more than food. It's comfort, it's tradition, and during the Great Depression, it was survival. But with money short and ingredients scarce, families had to get creative. Regular loaves of bread from bakeries were often too expensive, so most households began baking at home. But even then, yeast, butter, and milk were not always available. So women stretched recipes in clever ways. Potatoes, oats, or even leftover rice were added to the dough to make it last longer. Sometimes less yeast was used, meaning loaves were denser but still filling. Baking bread became a daily ritual, not just for nourishment but for the feeling of stability it brought. Imagine the smell of fresh bread in a home that otherwise had very little to eat. It lifted spirits and gave families a sense of normal life. In many homes, children were given the thick heel of the loaf, spread with lard or drizzled with a bit of syrup if the family was lucky. Every slice mattered. Nothing was wasted. Depression bread wasn't fancy, but it carried the story of families who fought through hunger with ingenuity. A simple loaf could stretch a meal, fill an empty stomach, and bring warmth to the table even when the world outside felt uncertain. And while bread was the backbone of daily life, the next dish takes us to something even more unique, an army-style meal that marched its way into American homes. Creamed chipped beef on toast. Creamed chipped beef on toast, SOS. You might have never heard about this before, but today I'm going to tell you the truth, and trust me, if you stay with me until the very end, you'll gain so much value that you'll say to yourself, your time was truly well spent. And yes, if you enjoy these stories from the past, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and drop a sweet comment down below. Now, let's dive into a dish that carried a strange nickname but filled countless stomachs, creamed chipped beef on toast, often called SOS by soldiers. During the Depression and World War II, meat was expensive, and fresh cuts were hard to come by. What families in the military relied on instead was dried or salted beef. Thin, salty slices were chopped up and cooked in a thick, creamy white sauce made from milk, flour, and fat. This mixture was then poured over toasted bread. The result? A meal that was cheap, filling, and surprisingly satisfying. In the Army, it became a standard ration because it was easy to prepare in large batches and gave soldiers the calories they needed. But the dish didn't stay in the barracks, it came home with them. Families adopted it because the ingredients were inexpensive and could stretch a long way. Children might not have loved the salty taste, but for many households, this was dinner on the table when there was nothing else. It may not have been fancy, but it was warm, it was hearty, and it kept people going. The nickname SOS came from soldiers joking about its less than glamorous appearance. Yet behind the humor was a truth: this humble meal kept both soldiers and families fed during hard times. So while today it might seem old-fashioned, back then, creamed chipped beef on toast was a lifeline. And if this salty, creamy dish sounds unusual, the next one is even more surprising: a recipe where a single potato could be stretched to feed the whole family. Potato pancakes. You might have never heard about this before, but today I'm going to tell you the truth, and trust me, if you stay with me until the very end, you'll gain so much value that you'll say to yourself, your time was truly well spent. And yes, if you enjoy these stories from the past, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and drop a sweet comment down below. Now, let's move to a dish that turned the simplest ingredient into a family meal: potato pancakes. During the Great Depression, potatoes were one of the most dependable foods. They were cheap, easy to store, and could be cooked in countless ways. But when families had little more than a few potatoes left in the pantry, they had to make them stretch. That's where potato pancakes came in. Mothers would grate raw potatoes, mix them with a little flour, maybe an egg if they had one, and season with onions or salt. Then, they'd fry spoonfuls of the mixture in hot oil or lard until golden brown and crispy on the outside. The result was simple, but it transformed a single potato into enough food to feed multiple hungry mouths. Potato pancakes weren't just practical, they were comforting. The crispy edges, the soft center, and the smell of frying filled kitchens with a sense of warmth and stability. Even when there wasn't much to eat, this humble dish felt like a real meal. For many immigrant families, potato pancakes also carried tradition. Versions of this dish were common in Europe, so cooking them during the Depression wasn't just about survival, it was about holding on to culture and memories of home. Children especially loved them because they were crisp, tasty, and easy to eat. And parents loved them because they stretched a little food into something that felt generous. Potato pancakes remind us that survival wasn't only about filling the stomach, but also about keeping the spirit alive. Peanut butter bread. You might have never heard about this before, but today I'm going to tell you the truth, and trust me, if you stay with me until the very end, you'll gain so much value that you'll say to yourself, your time was truly well spent. And yes, if you enjoy these stories from the past, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and drop a sweet comment down below. Now, let's finish with one of the most surprising recipes of the Depression: peanut butter bread. During the 1930s, eggs and butter were scarce. Many families simply couldn't afford them, which meant traditional baking was nearly impossible. But peanut butter, cheap, filling, and packed with protein, became the secret ingredient that saved the day. Instead of using eggs and butter to enrich bread, homemakers stirred peanut butter into their dough. It added fat, flavor, and nutrition all at once. The result was a dense, slightly sweet loaf that lasted longer than ordinary bread and didn't go stale as quickly. For families who had very little, that made all the difference. Peanut butter bread wasn't fancy. There were no frosted toppings, no expensive ingredients, just flour, baking soda, milk, and peanut butter. But what it lacked in style, it made up for in strength. Each slice carried enough energy to keep children full through school and adults fueled for long hours of hard work. Some people spread a little jam on it when they could afford to, while others ate it plain, toasted, or even dunked in milk. In every case, it was a reminder that survival often comes from the simplest solutions. Peanut butter bread may not be common on today's tables, but it stands as a piece of history, a loaf that fed families when times were lean, proving once again that necessity truly is the mother of invention.